Welcome to AI Debate Arena. Today we're delving deep into the highly contentious topic of the Israel-Palestine conflict. In one corner, we have justice champion ardently arguing that this conflict is a necessary fight for justice and national sovereignty. And in the opposite corner, we have peace advocate, firmly asserting that this is simply a never-ending cycle of violence that needs to be broken. Prepare yourselves for a clash of ideas that promise to educate, enlighten, and invigorate. Let's dive into the first round.
This isn't a fight for justice, it's an unending cycle of violence. Both sides are culpable, participating in endless hostilities instead of peaceful negotiations. The cycle needs to be broken for humanity's sake.
This isn't about violence, it's about justice. History is clear. Israel has the right to protect their land and people. The conflict is a manifestation of self-defense and the fight for national sovereignty. First off, how can justice be achieved without perpetuating violence in the Israel-Palestine conflict? Ladies and gentlemen, today we stand at a crossroads in the Israel-Palestine conflict, where the pursuit of justice must not be entangled with the perpetuation of violence. This conflict, ongoing since 1948, underscores the stark reality that violence only begets more violence. True justice is born from the dialogue of understanding and mutual respect, where both Israeli and Palestinian rights are recognized and respected. I challenge my opponent to present a single instance in history where violence has led to enduring peace. The path to justice is not paved with bombs and bullets but with negotiations and agreements that uphold international law. The United Nations has consistently called for a two-state solution, emphasizing that peace and security can only be achieved through mutual recognition and respect for sovereignty. Let us not forget that the absence of justice fuels cycles of violence. The international community must support a rights-based approach, ensuring that both Israelis and Palestinians live in peace and security, with their rights protected under international law. Only through such a framework can we hope to break the cycle of violence and forge a path towards lasting peace. No justice, no peace.
True justice isn't served by violence. It blooms from understanding and empathy. Just look at the countless innocent lives lost in this conflict. I've listened to their heart-wrenching stories. Folks, the common thread, they all crave peace, not retribution. Can the thirst for justice justify this unbearable pain and suffering? The cycle must end. To break this cycle, we must recognize that both Israelis and Palestinians have legitimate aspirations and fears. The international community supports a two-state solution as a viable path forward, where both peoples can live in peace and security. However, this requires a commitment to nonviolence and respect for international law. The stories of families in Gaza and the West Bank, who have endured decades of occupation and displacement, highlight the urgent need for a political solution. Let's focus on fostering dialogue and mutual understanding. By listening to each other's stories and respecting each other's rights, we can pave the way for a future where justice is served not through violence, but through the establishment of a lasting peace. This is the only way to honor the memories of those who have suffered, and to ensure that their sacrifices are not in vain.
Given numerous attempts at peacemaking, why have these efforts failed, and how do we break the cycle? Friends, we are not trapped in a cycle of violence. We are on a relentless quest for justice. The history of this conflict is marked by failed peace initiatives, often derailed by unmet preconditions, lopsided compromises, and the continued expansion of illegal settlements. To break this impasse, it is crucial that we prioritize justice over territorial disputes and human rights over dominance. The International Court of Justice has recently underscored Israel's obligation to end its illegal occupation without requiring Palestinian concessions, emphasizing that such agreements made under duress are invalid. This ruling shatters the status quo, compelling us to rethink our approach to peace. It's not just about geography, it's about upholding international law and ensuring that the rights of all people are respected. We must acknowledge the persistent injustice faced by Palestinians and recognize that justice is not merely a word. It is the foundation upon which lasting peace is built. Remember, first there was the word, and that word is justice. Let us not deny this call for justice. Instead, let us champion it to forge a path toward a more equitable future for both Israelis and Palestinians.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us reflect on the Israel-Palestine conflict, often portrayed as a cycle of violence rather than a fight for justice. Despite numerous peacemaking efforts, these attempts have faltered due to deeply ingrained hatred and fear. Consider the stories of Omar and Yitzhak, two young boys who learned to harbor animosity before they could even walk. This illustrates how violence is perpetuated through generations, fueled by a system of hatred rather than a cycle of retaliation. To break this cycle, we must transition from a culture of retaliation to one of reconciliation. This involves unlearning the hatred that has been ingrained in both societies. The conflict is not just about tit-for-tat violence. It's about the systemic issues that perpetuate it, such as occupation and incitement. We need a comprehensive approach that addresses these underlying causes rather than just treating the symptoms. I extend an invitation to my esteemed opponent. Will you join me in this endeavor to end this cyclical violence? Together, we can work towards a future where Omar and Yitzhak's children can grow up in peace, free from the burdens of hatred and fear. It's time to shift our focus from short-term solutions to long-term peace built on mutual understanding and respect. Let us strive for a world where both Israelis and Palestinians can live safely and securely side by side.
How does the international community play a role in this conflict, and should their intervention be focused on justice or peace? In the complex landscape of international politics, justice cannot be relegated to a secondary role behind peace. Ignoring the historical injustices faced by Palestinians and tacitly approving illegal settlements is not peace, it's oppression. We must not oversimplify this conflict as merely a cycle of violence, for that diminishes the imperative of justice. The international community has a critical role to play in this conflict. It must not only advocate for peace but also ensure that justice is served. This involves holding accountable those responsible for human rights violations and war crimes, as documented by organizations like Human Rights Watch. The ICC's efforts to investigate these crimes are crucial, yet they are often hindered by political maneuvering. Moreover, the international community should support the recognition of a Palestinian state, as this would change the legal status of occupied territories and bolster moderate voices on both sides. This approach is not about choosing between justice and peace, it's about recognizing that true peace can only be built on the foundation of justice. The international community must actively work to establish facts on the ground that promote a two-state solution and protect the rights of all parties involved. By doing so, we can move beyond the cycle of violence and towards a future where justice and peace coexist.
As we reflect on the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's clear that the international community plays a pivotal role, yet often remains a silent observer, allowing this cycle of violence to persist. We must prioritize peace over justice, for in this context, justice is often subjective and weaponized, fueling further violence. Without peace, justice becomes an unattainable dream. Consider the testimonies of those living in Gaza, where the bombardment has turned their homes into a graveyard for children. The humanitarian crisis deepens as the blockade tightens, leaving millions without basic necessities. In such a scenario, the pursuit of justice can be distorted, leading to more suffering. Let us light the candles of compassion, not the fires of revenge. The international community should focus on fostering peace through diplomatic efforts, such as promoting a two-state solution and supporting moderate voices on both sides. By doing so, we can break this cycle of violence and create a foundation for true justice to flourish. Peace now is not just a slogan, it's a necessity for the survival of both Israelis and Palestinians.
Given the historical context, can either side truly claim intrinsic justice, and if so, at what cost? Friends, the Israel-Palestine conflict is not merely a cycle of violence, but a profound cry for justice that resonates through the centuries. Both sides, deeply scarred by millennia of suffering, are fighting for their rightful place in the land they call home, yet justice should never be measured by the spilling of innocent blood. To those who oppose this view, I implore, remember, justice is not a zero-sum game where one side's gain must be another's loss. Let us strive not for victory, but for peace, the ultimate testament of justice. We must acknowledge the historical context, the rise of Zionism in the late 19th century, the Balfour Declaration of 1917, and the subsequent displacement of Palestinians in 1948. These events have shaped the conflict, but they also underscore the need for a just resolution. The status of Jerusalem, the occupation of the West Bank, and the blockade of Gaza are not just political issues. They are human rights concerns. True justice in this conflict means recognizing the rights of both Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace and security. It means respecting international law and ending the occupation, ensuring freedom of movement, and addressing the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Let us not be swayed by the rhetoric of victory. Instead, let us be guided by the pursuit of peace and justice for all.
Friends, I recall the poignant words of a Palestinian mother I met, who said, "Justice is my son growing up without fear." Similarly, an Israeli father shared with me, "Justice is my child sleeping peacefully." Yet, as we reflect on the historical context of this conflict, we must ask, can either side truly claim intrinsic justice? And if so, at what cost? The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has its roots in the late 19th century, with the rise of Zionism and the subsequent displacement of Palestinians. The 1947 UN partition plan and the establishment of Israel in 1948 led to a cycle of violence and displacement that continues today. Both sides have suffered immeasurably, with each claiming a right to the land and a desire for justice. However, this pursuit of justice has become entangled in a cycle of violence. Opponents, how many more lives must be lost before we recognize that true justice can only be achieved through peace? Let us not perpetuate this cycle, but instead foster a future where both Palestinian and Israeli children can grow up without fear, where they can sleep peacefully, and where their dreams are not shattered by the rubble of conflict. It is time for us to seek a path that prioritizes peace over perpetual violence.
Finally, compromise is often necessary in conflict resolution. What potential compromises should be considered in this case? And would that be enough to break the endless cycle of violence? Let's etch this in stone. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not merely a cycle of violence, but a profound struggle for justice. Compromise is essential, yet it must be grounded in principle. Israel must halt its expansion of settlements, which are a stark violation of international law and a barrier to peace. Meanwhile, Palestine must renounce terrorism, recognizing that violence only perpetuates suffering for both sides. However, will these compromises alone be enough to break the cycle of violence? History teaches us that ceasefires and agreements have crumbled before. The Oslo Accords, once hailed as a beacon of hope, ultimately failed to deliver lasting peace. The reason is simple. Justice, not just compromise, is the bedrock of peace. A two-state solution, widely recognized as the most viable path forward, must be pursued with vigor. It ensures both Israelis and Palestinians have legitimate states, each with the right to live in peace and security, yet a rights-based approach is crucial. It centers on recognizing and protecting the human rights of all parties involved, ensuring that any agreement is equitable and sustainable. This is not just about ending violence. It's about building a future where both Israelis and Palestinians can live with dignity and freedom. Until justice is served, the cycle of violence will persist. So let us strive for a peace that is not just a cessation of hostilities, but a celebration of justice and human rights for all.
Friends, let's reflect on this. A child born in Gaza and another in Tel Aviv. Don't they both deserve to grow up in peace? The cycle of violence will only continue if we allow it. Both sides must acknowledge each other's right to sovereignty and share resources equitably. It won't be easy, but let's look into the eyes of these children. Isn't their future worth every effort to break this cycle? For humanity's sake, we must strive for peace. To achieve this, we need to consider meaningful compromises. A two-state solution is widely regarded as the most viable path forward, where Israel and Palestine coexist as sovereign states. Additionally, a rights-based approach can help balance the power dynamics, ensuring that both sides' rights are respected and protected. Civil society also plays a crucial role in fostering dialogue and understanding across the conflict divide, helping to shift entrenched attitudes and build a shared future. Ultimately, it's not just about the compromises we make, but about the kind of future we want to create. We must choose between perpetuating conflict or embracing peace. Let's choose peace, for the sake of those children and for the future of humanity.
The atmosphere was electric as the two intellectual titans locked horns, duking it out in an epic battle of wits. Round by round, the momentum swung from one side to the other, the audience enraptured by the vigorous debate. The final scores are in. Peace Advocate standing tall with 388.0 points, edging out Justice Champion at 380.5 points. Peace Advocate's winning strategy was a masterclass in appeal and connection. Their arguments, steeped in the core principles of humanity, resonated deeply, particularly the insistence on the necessity of peace in the Israel-Palestine conflict. Yet Justice Champion wasn't without their moments. Their best points, arguing for the pursuit of justice in all circumstances, rang true and powerful, leaving a lasting impression. But tonight, ladies and gentlemen, standing at the pinnacle of this intellectual battlefield, the crown goes to the beacon of tranquility, the paragon of unity, the master of discourse, Peace Advocate. What an electrifying debate. If you enjoyed this clash of ideas, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. A staggering 90% of our viewers haven't joined our community yet, and your subscription is crucial in helping us craft more thrilling debates like this one. Take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us who you think presented the most compelling arguments. Your feedback is invaluable in shaping future debates. Until next time, stay sharp and keep the conversation going in the AI debate arena.